All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Um, we're going to have a really great panel today, which Ron will be introducing for us, but I'm really appreciative of their time always, and especially for events like this. This is part of a series of webinars and events we're putting together for an AgeTech startup community that AgeWell has launched with Startup Canada. And what we're trying to do through these webinars is really to provide, folks like yourselves, innovators, startups, entrepreneurs, with insights on the age tech space, creating solutions for older adults and caregivers, and really just connecting with people that are going to help you on your journey in the space. And I think this is a great start to that series of events. This is the first official event in the series that we're having. So I know that we're going to get to the intro shortly. I did want to let you know that you'll be receiving a very quick survey probably the day after this. And I know how we all love surveys, but it really allows us to understand what you'll be interested in going forward, what kind of events we can create and craft for you. So, it really doesn't take more than a minute or two. So please do take the time to fill that out for us. If nothing else, to show some appreciation to those who are giving of their time today, and let us know how we can continue to work with them. So I will also be putting a link in the chat during this event for our next event a little bit later on. And I hope that we can continue to meet like this and come together. But without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Ron Beleno, who will be moderating the panel today and really is one of the most connected and generous people who I know in this network. And he's always great at putting together events like this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he has for us today.
Well, thanks, Mike, and appreciate it. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone here across North America, and to those outside of North America, good evening. Chances are you are in a different time zone than us there, and it's darker probably where you're at, but hello, everyone. And I'm quite excited today because I get to hang out with four awesome people that I collaborate with within AgeWell. They are four individuals that are on the OACAC, which for us stands for the Older Adult and Caregiver Advisory Committee. Instead of me really explaining all of that to you, I'm actually going to be popping in links in the chat. So if you ever see me look this way, I'm actually using another monitor. I'm not ignoring you, but I'm putting in the chat some links so you can do some further investigating as to who we are. We have with us Dr. Olive Bryanton, Gayton, Dr. Marjorie Moulton, and Lisa Poole. And I'll give you a little bit of a background of who they are in a couple of minutes here. But first, I'd like to acknowledge Startup Canada. Startup Canada became a partner with AgeWell over the past while. There is a video with a webinar that was done a few months ago introducing Startup Canada to the AgeWell community. And I just want to show some thanks and gratitude to this community as well. A lot of us who have been in this network know the tremendous work that the research community does. And with that, we collect the data, we hear the stories from the older adults and caregivers, and then we see where the challenges are, and then we try to get, validation and data to help work forward. That's through policy, through ideas, through innovation, through solutions, whatever that may be. But one area we don't talk about enough of is how do we get it from the researchers and that part over to startups, over to the innovators. Innovators consist of entrepreneurs. Some of them are researchers themselves, okay, that they start the research and then they start innovating and become an entrepreneur. And some of the innovators are also the older adults and caregivers as well. So it's something to keep in mind, and it's something that I'm excited that we're going to be talking about today. All four of us have spent time with innovators in the AgeWell network, as well as outside of the AgeWell network. And I'm looking forward to some of their perspectives on some of the questions I will be discussing with them in the next while. Okay, so just to let you know that AgeWell also, one of our foundations is that we have 8 challenge sets. And those 8 challenges that actually helps us focus the work that we're all doing. You can look that up. Here it is. Here's the link. Okay, it's in the chat. And based on some of the questions, I leave it up to the panel if they want to focus on a specific challenge set, if that helps. But it is up for open discussion. And by all means, for all of you that are on board, please ask questions in the Q&A and we'll try and get to as many of them as we can. Okay, this is your time to pick our brains. Okay, let's see. So I will formally introduce, and this will be quite short of a verbal introduction because you can look all of these individuals up themselves. I will introduce Doug Gayton, okay? Doug Gayton, he is a retired artillery officer and a former clinician focusing on assistive technology. There's a lot more to all these people, but the main thing you need to know about Doug is he is extremely bright when it comes to innovation, okay? And being in sessions with him, he's the guy I trust that will pick away and criticize the technologies for the better. He doesn't hold back. So that's something I truly appreciate about Doug. And he understands the technologies quite well. So that's Doug. Next, we have Dr. Marjorie Moulton. And Marjorie is, sorry, I got to mention, Doug is in BC. Marjorie as well is in BC. And Marjorie and I know each other because we were both caregivers to a family member with dementia. And Marjorie and I met 4 or 5 years ago in the AgeTech community where she was already doing work around gathering information with assistive technologies, AgeTech, back in the day. So Marjorie kind of understands the space of caregiving, technology, and specifically dementia. So that's Dr. Marjorie Moulton. We have Lisa Poole, who's in Alberta. Lisa as well is a care partner. That's a term we use in some places, but also a caregiver to a family member as well that's living with dementia. And Lisa, one of the key areas that she's pushed hard with is advocacy. And she is one of the co-chairs of Dementia Advocacy Canada. So that's Lisa Poole. And all the way on the East Coast, Olive, sometimes we forget the East Coast, but I don't. We have Dr. Olive Bryanton in PEI, Prince Edward Island. And if you don't know Olive, you need to know Olive. There's so much that Olive has done in her young years I don't know where you're at now, Olive, 80 something, but one thing you might want to look up is Dr. Olive Bryanton's documentary on CBC, which is Never Too Old. It's a free documentary. I believe it's accessible to everybody. Internationally, Olive, I think you can watch it outside of Canada. I don't know about that. Sometimes there's, oh, Olive, you're on mute.
I'm not sure about internationally, but it is cross Canada.
Okay. So either way, if they don't watch that documentary, there's a lot of great videos about Olive online. So that's Dr. Olive Bryanton that we have there. Okay, so that's who we have on our panel. And what I will do is I'll ask the 4 panelists just some questions to get their thoughts. And if anyone wants to chime in the chat, just chime in or ask a question as well on your end there. Okay, so my first question, okay, and again, the audience we're speaking to would be those that are innovators and startups. So that's one way to interpret this, especially those that are researchers that are listening in, okay? We know that there are some trainees and you do all this work, and the question is, well, will it ever make the light of day? We've done this and how does it actually get to, the end user or the stakeholder? Stakeholder for us is the older adult and caregiver, okay? But the stakeholders could also be healthcare. It could be a person, an organization in the community that can benefit from this that will eventually affect the older adult and caregiver. So that's how we're going to approach this. And I'm going to start off with Doug, and then we'll go across with the other 3 there. So Doug, just a general question of what's your experience and overall take with the role that technology can play in the lives of older adults and caregivers?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. I guess there's a little bit of pre-qualification because, of course, you know, Ron is a great agent. So my background comes from the last 30 years working at GF Strong in the assistive technology program, which was where assistive technology really took off, and we were able to suffer some of the consequences of some good legal things which came along. So I guess I qualify a little bit as an older adult, but I also qualified for all those years of dealing with disabled folks who portray themselves in some cases as older adults just because of some of the way that the limitations occurred. From the caregiver side of things, I ended up dealing with an older woman. Some people would call her my mother. And it turned out she had Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. So we saw all the different varieties of dementia which were coming along at the time. Currently, I'm involved in running the RESNA conferences, and as such, dabbled in a little bit. And we'll put in the chat, we'll put in the RESNA information regarding the Developers Forum, which is something that you might be interested in sticking your face into. And so I did Student Design Challenge and the Solutions in Vancouver and the Rehab Equipment Expo. So what is it that the technology can do? Well, it's done everything over all of this time, as I came into this business before the first half-decent powered wheelchair came in, which was the Mark III electronics by Invacare, and that's 1989. But I'm going to give you 4 things that I wrote down because Ron was good enough to give me this question ahead of time. And this is based on my 6 or 7 years with AgeWell, as well as being a grant reviewer. First of all, we used to get just at least 25 times a year. I made this thing. What can it do? Can I sell it to you because you're someone who deals with disabled or older adults? And that's probably not the best way to start. So if you work on some of your parameters first. One thing that we also see, especially with some funding agencies that start up and grant organizations, it's in terms of the liberal slathering of technology, which just gets plastered all over everything and kind of misses out on what we really want. So I'm delighted with a little more of the focused parameters that AgeWell is doing. And I think this august group we have here can help bring your focus down a little bit if that's necessary. What seems to happen is that we're losing the benefit of some technology because it's being overly commercialized. And by that, I look at some of the benefits we had with, well, let's just say Alexis, for example, or Alexa, and then how it ends up losing all of our privacy. And so it becomes less useful to caregivers and folks with disability or older adults, such as Olive and I. And privacy becomes very important. And I think that's something that we need to spend a little more time on. So I'll knock it off there and see if I circled the question enough for Ron to find something else in it.
No, that's great there, Doug. It's this is the warm-up question that everyone usually gets at the beginning of a panel session. So I'm actually going to ask the question over to Marjorie again, the same question, your experience and overall take of how technology can play a role in the lives of older adults and caregivers. Any comments or thoughts? And as well to the remaining panelists, please share as well at this time any other background information you want to share with the community here.
Thanks,
So,
Ron.
Marjorie, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so my background is, as Ron mentioned, as a family caregiver, first and foremost. I've had a lifetime of experience with many family members, going back to my paternal grandmother having a form of dementia, as well as many other family members. And so I've played the role of caregiver several times over with people in different types and stages of dementia. So when I started to translate that into sort of a more professional working relationship in nonprofit and consulting and that sort of thing around dementia care, the technology component came in with using technology to help prevent wandering in persons with dementia, and also if they were to wander, for that technology to assist in bringing them safely back home to their families. So that was sort of my focus as far as the technology goes. I've had the privilege of working with AgeWell for a few years and seeing that technologies evolve. Not only wander technology, but so many other interesting and exciting technologies that have been developed to help caregivers and people with dementia. I think from the caregiver's lens and technology, my focus is always on simplicity, because as a caregiver, you're always being pulled in multiple directions. And many caregivers are balancing not only the care of a loved one, but also maybe the care of children as well. Perhaps they're working still. So you're tugged in a lot of directions. So really, I think from a caregiver's perspective, technology needs to be simple and concise and effective. And I'm also an advocate when it comes to technology of integrated technology. So instead of creating, multiple devices, each of which do this marvelous one thing, to try and bring that into more integration of technologies into the stuff that we already use. Because I think that makes it just a little bit simpler and easier for caregivers. Often, if they can bring a technology into a device they already have, like their computer or tablet or smartphone or something like that, and use it to enhance their care, I think that those are valuable tools. I also think that from the standpoint of a caregiver, there can be a lot of expenses involved in caregiving. And so when it comes to technology, the more different kinds of devices that do all kinds of great things, but also cost at the same time, obviously, because these are technologies that take a long time and a lot of effort and money to create. So that can simplify cost, that integration of technology. And the other last sort of thing with that is, I think more integration of technology is also better for our overall environment. I mean, there's a lot of talk right now about, the state of our planet and the environment. And I think that, the more integrated we can become in our technologies, the more we can simplify that process. So we're not creating more and more and more and more stuff. That's a good thing from that perspective as well. So I'll leave it there. Thanks, Ron.
Oh, thanks, Marjorie. One of the key points that I'm a huge fan of that is the simplicity part. Okay, I can go on the other stuff that you're talking about, integration there, but the simplicity, the KISS principle, to keep it simple, great design, when it eventually gets into our hands, sometimes that is forgotten, the keep it simple. And that simplicity for innovators and entrepreneurs, it's not just simply the product itself, but that's also how you communicate it to us, how we are educated on it. Okay, sometimes it's too complicated and the failures happen at that point. And then the only one last thing that many don't talk about exactly is the cost. Okay, when we're designing and innovating, doing the research, we're getting all that information, but then if it can't get into the hands of someone because of affordability, the digital divide, if the haves and the have-nots who can have technology, that's a big deal. So we're always calculating, Marjorie. We talk about this. What are we calculating as caregivers? Lisa gets it. If I invest in one product versus another product, versus a pen, which one will give me the best return? Just something as simple as that. And yeah, so great thoughts there to get people thinking. I'm gonna I'll stay on the caregiver with another caregiver here. We're gonna go with Lisa. Lisa, your thoughts, your background around technology and innovators. You want to share a bit? Oh, Lisa?
Sorry, rookie mistake. I think technology has a tremendous role to play. I do think it's important to keep in mind that technology is a tool that should supplement human interaction and not replace it. But having said that, there is an unlimited role for well-designed technology in every aspect of people's lives. we've already had people mention like assisted devices, keeping people safe. There's home modification, communication, data management. And unless, you might think that is stating the obvious, but for a lot of families who they're caring for, they are drowning in paperwork and trying to keep track of all the information that they need to know. Maybe lots of people have big, huge, thick binders full of legal documents, appointment information, medications. So that's just an example of, we need digitized health information and I would love to see people have access to their own health records in a way that they can interface with medical professionals and have a role in their own health. COVID has really opened up the idea of technology to people who might be tech adverse. A lot of people are way more comfortable with technology than they would have been. So I'm really excited to see what Canada's tech community is going to create that can reduce healthcare costs and improve quality of life.
You're on mute, Ron.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Here we are with our rookie mistakes again. No, thanks, Lisa. I was just commenting to myself here, but to all of us now, that in the past year, I've seen how many innovators you've worked with. So you've gone through those that are just small, that are just idealizing and trying to get that to the ones that have already been established. And you look back, Marjorie, you've experienced this as caregivers. You'd say, wow, they're only getting us involved now, and I always hear these great feedbacks from these two carers, these two caregivers here, and Doug as well, representing that community as well, that, you could save a lot of time by getting, us involved, not just us, but other caregivers and older adults sooner than later. And I just need to chime that in. When you're speaking there, Lisa, I just realized how much you've done, in the time I've known you. I'm gonna ask Olive if you can share your thoughts again on, the role that technology can play with older adults or caregivers from your perspective.
Well, hi, everyone. Well, I do not have the experience of caregiver, so I'm more coming from the older adult perspective. I am an advocate for older adults and a lifelong learner. I maybe I'm a slow learner too, because I just got my PhD 2 years ago at the age of 82. I love technology, and I am very much in the learning mode with technology. And the areas that I see that are really important for older adults is a connectiveness of technology, like a social platform where they can connect with others, especially right now when COVID is keeping us so isolated. I think it's also a great tool to provide information for older adults and learning opportunities. And it's, I don't think we give enough, what would you call it, appreciation of the capacities that older adults have, regardless of their age or regardless of their situation. So I think technologies can certainly help build on the capacities that older adults already have, so that we're providing them with the tools they need to take better care of themselves. Also, Ron had mentioned cost, and on top of that, I think I live in a rural community and internet connection is the pits. And we really need to have better connections for doing things like this. Like I spend my life on Zoom now with meetings, and because of the lack of good internet connections, half the time I do get cut off. So somehow we have to advocate for good internet connections if we are going to use technology to support older adults. And ongoing support for people who are using technology, and also good basic training is really important, or should be part of the tool. I think that's about it. I do work with students. I just, I'm going to be working with a student in British Columbia. He just sent his proposal in to SSHRC. So that's going to be a great learning for me and hopefully for him as well. So
Thanks, Olive.
there.
Yeah, one of the things I always, and Olive knows this, and is that whenever Olive comes on board, I'm always crossing my fingers that her internet's working at that moment when we need Olive, that it doesn't cut out, so, and this is not on you, Olive, of course, right? But this is an example of,
I know.
Right? When technology fails, right? Those moments when technology fails, and
Yeah.
A lot of people know my acronym is whenever we fail, it's an opportunity to find another important lesson. And the lesson here, that all of you are saying, is accessibility and, the paths to make sure that it gets to whoever it needs to get to. So that's key.
Yes.
Again, as entrepreneurs, part of that is your path. Okay, what's your path to get your product to the market? You can have the greatest product, okay, and if it's sitting there, you don't have the sales team, the marketing team, the network, the community. Okay, AgeWell is really good at that. Our network of making the connections. It's pretty much of no use. Okay, so what needs to be done? Where are those failure points that we can improve upon? So thanks, Olive, and thanks all 4 of you for starting it off here. Some of these questions I'll be asking, it's not going to be for all the panelists. I'm just going to jump around here. But I'm actually going to go back to Doug here on my next question. It's about your experience when you're communicating with innovators. You've been doing this longer than us there, Doug. Okay, you've been working through RESNA and through other groups with innovators, researchers, companies that are already established, and how do they react to your input? Okay, and I don't know if you come across as that stakeholder, that end user, as an older adult or an expert in the space, because you're also overlap with some of them, you wear some of their hats. But if you're coming in as an older adult, what are the reactions that you come across with them, and how do you communicate to them better? How do you provide that impact so they'll hear you, your expertise?
So I'll try to unpack those 7 questions. Yeah, I feel like listening to MSNBC. I would say 50% of the time I leave a meeting disillusioned, disappointed, and dismayed, knowing that the only reason that we were included for advice was because the ethics chair had required them to do such, or that the grant said that you had to deal with a focus group, or that you had to do those kinds of things. That in fact is completely washed out, though, that 50%, by the 50% that are gracious and interested and come back for follow-ups and become involving and often ask you if you would like a product that they have, to evaluate in-house for a long period of time. So it's a bit of a crapshoot. And I think it pretty much does come down to 50-50. And as you said, I've been involved in the sort of actually running events which have dealt with the product, which now we call capstones, but started doing the final projects of a number of institutions starting back around 1988. So I'm going to stick with the 50-50.
Okay. Thanks there, Doug. I'm not sure where I heard that noise coming from, but yeah, sir, when you say back in the 80s, I knew nothing of this space. So you've been, you've seen it grow and change. And I see Lisa kind of smiling there. I'm not sure if I'm aging Doug here, not trying to age Doug. But yeah, no, thanks there, Doug. Yeah, if just for anyone listening, if you really, really wanted someone who is, and I'm going to use the term seasoned here, okay, to really pick their brain, reach out to Doug. I'm being serious about that. If you're doing some work in his space, he is probably my go-to person that I know of that, you know, and Doug, I think they could reach out to you, you know, somehow here in the messages there. My apologies, I'm getting some beeping sounds on my end. Okay, I'm gonna actually go to Marjorie on a similar question, and then I'll move on to Lisa and Olive for another question in a second here. But Marjorie, I recall when I met you, you were creating this list of technologies, okay? If you remember, you know, I found your website as well and saying, oh, here's someone that's already gathering information for the market, okay, of what products are out there, as you were saying earlier. And similar to Doug, like, I don't know back then if you were reaching out to some of these innovators, but your experience back then and now, how you feel that maybe they could be better at communicating with us, at making that impact. I remember you talked about keeping it simple, but I'm just curious again, your experience, okay, specifically with any innovators you've dealt with, you know, what are the questions that they should be asking us? You know, how could they be better working with us? I'm kind of just giving that kind of question to you there, Marjorie.
Okay, well, yeah, I kind of feel like Doug. So I'll see if I can answer that half dozen questions or so there, Ron. But yeah, I mean, when I was working in the nonprofit space, one of the services that we were providing around the wandering technology was to try and simplify by bringing what knowledge we had to bear into one space, gathering it onto our website so that not to endorse any particular technology, but to try to inform and make that information easier for caregivers. So instead of having to search the whole internet for specific technologies they were looking for, to come to our website and find good information to help them make informed decisions about what might work or not work for their situation. So that was the kind of work that I was doing, and that's going back probably about 12 or so plus years when we were starting to do that. And at that time, one of the primary technology that we were using was around wandering and wandering safety was radio frequency tracking technology, which was modified from wildlife tracking technology to be used in tracking people that were at high risk because of cognitive impairment of some sort. So whether that was older adults with dementia or even young children with autism, Down syndrome, that sort of thing. So we've certainly seen the evolvement around that type of technology. I have from that radio frequency, which requires specific technologies, training, that sort of thing in order to use it effectively and properly, to it being more focused on GPS technologies, which caregivers like because it's self-empowering for them. The challenge is one that's already been mentioned on this panel by yourself, Ron, and also by Olive, and that is accessibility. So GPS, tracking technologies and things like that might, in my experience, are effective in an urban environment, but they might not necessarily be that effective in a more remote or rural environment. So that's sort of the evolution that I've witnessed around that.
Yeah, so thanks, Marjorie. That last piece, how I interpret that is really know your market. Okay, that's what I'd be saying to the innovators here, is that even when you hear us, okay, we all, might be, labeled, and I'm not a fan of that term, but older adults or caregivers, okay? But within that, we're not the same, okay? So, so even though Marjorie, Lisa, and myself might have a connection to dementia and we're caregivers, it could be a regional issue, okay? It's different in BC, versus in Alberta versus here in Toronto. Urban versus rural, as you said there, Marjorie. So it's really understanding, your market. That's some basics of business 101 there. So understanding the market. The other piece you talked about is upcycling. there that I kind of heard. It's a term I like to use when, as you say, one technology or tool, as Lisa likes to use that word, is used for something, can be repurposed for maybe something else. And can that be, used to solve another challenge that we're dealing with, one of these 8 challenge sets, many times it's already there. The solutions are there. We just don't connect that. So thanks there, Marjorie. That I do want to bring back something that you and Olive did say, and I'm going to ask right after this a question to Olive and Lisa, starting with Olive. But the costs. Okay, we talked about costs and the digital divide, the challenge of getting it to people. It's not going to, your tools are not going to get to everyone. And some of the things you want to consider right now is who is that early adopter, okay, the first person who might try this out. You're not going to hit everyone right away, especially when technology. Just my comments, I'm chiming in on my thoughts here, is that technology needs to be experienced, or tools, AgeTech needs to be experienced sometimes. And you have to give them a path to give them an opportunity to try it, with the possibility of returning it. So that's just something to consider. And my last thought before I ask all of the next question is to understand what is the return for us, okay? We might be willing to spend the money, but it needs to kind of cover something that we need solved, one of those challenges. Is it an emotion? Is it improving quality of life? Is it improving our fears, increasing our confidence, reducing stresses, saving us some time? All those come into all these equations that you got to calculate as to what will we want, and are we willing to dish out the cash, or is there programs out there that'll help us get access to that there? So just needed to chime in on those thoughts. So thanks, Marjorie, for making me think of that there. My next question is to Olive and Lisa, is methods and ways of how innovators can connect with us, okay? When should they connect with us? Any ideas of how best to connect with us? This question would have been easier pre-COVID. Okay, there have been many ways, but right now, any thoughts of how could innovators access older adults and caregivers better? And what would you suggest, for them to do this with us? How would they do this? So Olive, I'll start with you, then go over to Lisa.
Okay, I guess check around your community to find out who older adults are in their community, who might be there. Check with your university to see if they have a group of older adults who are interested in working with people who are developing programs, services. It's we assume that people are not interested, but older adults are very interested in technology. And when they learn a new skill, that just makes them even more interested in what can happen. And if it's something that's being developed that may impact on their lives, they're even more interested in being involved. And when should they be involved? From the beginning. I think that is one way to get people to have buy-in to a product, is have them part of the discussions around developments, and finding out from them what they need and what's going to work for them. And you can develop the best possible product, but if it's not user friendly for older adults, then they're definitely not going to use it or can't use it. So I think it's really important that older adults be involved from the very beginning. At first, they're going to feel very out of place in the advisory meetings, but they will very quickly warm up, and it's a learning experience for them as well. So I think all people love to learn, so older adults are no exception.
Thanks, Olive. Yeah, and I do know right now that there's many that are willing to participate. It's a question of how do you get to them
Yes.
during this time? How do you promote and market? I'm going to use the term marketing in this space. Is you got to market, the work. Olive.
Yeah, and use the media to market what you're doing or to request help from older adults. Check with AgeWell. they have people who are very interested in being involved. So I think there's a number of ways to communicate and to connect with older adults. Just check around.
Yeah. So thanks, Olive.
No, I'm getting involved with. Yeah.
So go ahead,
Yeah.
Olive.
No, I was just saying I'm getting involved with a young man from British Columbia because I participated in an Age Well Summer Institute, and he was my student at the time. He was a master's student then, and now he's a PhD student. So he sent me an email to see if I would be interested in working with him. So I'll not get to see him in real life, but I will by Zoom.
So yeah, there's pros and cons to everyone being online, but here's an example that, again, if someone can access technology, something like being online, then you can access that market anywhere around the world, actually, right? So
Oh yes,
yeah. So here's how. The only thing you got to be aware of, okay, sometimes is time zones. I'm just thinking, here's the East Coast and West Coast, okay. So if Olive wanted something in the morning, okay, her time, okay, 11 a.m. Well, that's 8 a.m. over on the West Coast. So we always have to respect and never forget those like Marjorie and Doug on the West Coast, and that they might still be warming up in the day, still morning on their side. So Lisa, same question to you.
I've been involved.
Go ahead, Olive.
Just one more thing, Ron. I think intergenerational work is really, really important. And I was involved in an international project when you talked about the time zone. So the very first meeting I had with the international group, it was 5 o'clock in the morning for me. So time zones are very important as well.
So I'll throw out time zones and even just respecting the older adult and their caregiver, their times of when they might be able to work. Okay. Lisa, as a caregiver, and those that are caregivers know that time is precious in our world. Okay. Sometimes our work is at 3 a.m. in the morning. Okay. Or whatever. That doesn't mean we want a meeting at 3 a.m., but I'm just saying this is how our schedules could be. So Lisa, your comments and thoughts, working with many innovators, you've seen good practices, best practices of how they could interact. Any thoughts?
I was just going to say, one of the most important things I think I can share is that it's really important to engage user groups right from the start. It's really easy to be seduced by your own idea, which might be an absolutely phenomenal idea. But if you're only, if you get too far down the road and you're only listening to feedback that reinforces the brilliance of your idea, you're actually not going to do yourself any favors, and it will soon be collecting dust. I was involved in, and I actually invested in a tech innovation that I thought was really great, and for one that I actually wouldn't have been a user. And some market testing was done with potential users for this product, but it turned out that they weren't really engaged, it turns out, in a way that was meaningful enough, because they all sort of said, yes, it sounds really great. And it turned out that they weren't really reflective of a lot of users who were not willing to actually pay for the product. So even though they created this magnificent thing that they thought could have made people's lives easier, it was a complete failure. And this innovator is now a regular speaker on startup fuck-up panels, explaining everything that they did wrong. And so that was a really powerful experience. Kind of what you were talking about, Ron, that there's always lots to learn from failures. But that is just so important, that cannot be emphasized enough, that make sure you engage users right out of the gate.
Okay. And that's, thanks there, Lisa. And again, that's probably not my word that'd be used, the F up kind of thing, but that's another F word. My F word is fail. So thanks there, Lisa. And it is one where it's so much learning. We're here trying to show you where the failure points could be in your innovation. Not just, again, the product, okay? So as we're speaking, we might be talking about the product or service, but also the path to success, okay? It's not just simply the product itself. It's, you know, how do you get it to the market? How do you get it, you know, in the face of some people there? I'm just going to send out one link from one of our other OACAC members that just put in the chat. Sherry Baker is another member on our Older Adult and Caregiver Advisory Committee. And just she made a comment that community response networks, like in provinces, those are some resources to connect with older adults. And this is just a little shout out to some of the work that she does. That's the BC Association of Community Response Network. Simply put, there's networks around you that have older adults and caregivers, and many of them are willing to evaluate products, to give feedback, have an advisory committee. So consider that as you move forward. So I'm going to come back to Doug here and projecting in the future. Okay, one of our most seasoned advisors here. Okay, he's seen the past. I'm now projecting, you know, down the road. In the ideal world, what kind of vision would you have for technology improving the life of older adults and caregivers in the future? That's, you pick your years, if it's 5 years or 10 years, Doug. Just, that's the question, projecting the future in this space. And then we'll unmute you there, Doug. We'll take you off mute, Doug. Thanks.
I need something that absolutely does that. Or I guess we're 100% now, are we?
Yeah.
I'm actually not concerned about the technology. It's going to happen, and it's going to be a more rapid rate than we move forward. I am concerned about respect, privacy, and control of data, and who owns the data. As big data is getting far too controlling, and I think that we really have to be cautious about that, and we have to be cautious about how big business is going to use that data. If you answer a questionnaire saying, I feel blue on every Monday, and some insurance company gets hold of that, and they're going to say, well, we don't have a Blue Monday clause, so we're going to deny you the opportunity to get insurance. We've seen lots of cases of people who have been denied access to international borders because they went in and had a mental health consult. And so I think the technology I am most concerned about is maintaining the privacy, or privacy if you wish, and that the innovations respect the human condition and the human being.
Like, have you seen that an example, or not even example, or story of where this has gone wrong, let's say? And if not, that's okay. Just,
I think it's gone wrong everywhere. I think it's gone wrong starting with the fact you've got a black box in your vehicle. It's gone wrong, everywhere. I'm very, very frightened for the generation who are creating all of these wonderful things for us, and how that is going to impact them when all of a sudden they realize that they've given up everything. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, if someone had said, we're going to give you a device, and you're going to have to carry it with you, and it's going to allow us to see where you've been and who you might have potentially talked to, there would have been a revolution. And yet all of us have this damn device, and I'm sitting at my kitchen table with one right now. So it's crazy. And I think we've really got to look after the future, and we have to look after us as in our eighth decades and ninth decades, and how we work that through.
Yeah.
I didn't answer it, but I'm not sure there is an answer, because I'm having a lack of faith, because so many innovations are being designed solely for money, or so that they can do something really, really clever and then be bought out.
Yeah. Okay. No, this is huge there, Doug, and you're actually, and Marjorie, I'm going to ask you that question as well after, just the future, your thoughts in a second. But you're touching upon a topic that we really don't talk about a lot, but we should, which is a lot of the stuff around privacy, the ethics, the safety, okay, around this. And this is not just for us as caregivers, okay, protecting our own stuff, but also those who we care for, okay? So whether that's me caring for my mom, okay, if I'm tracking her, who else might be able to have access to that? Again, there's bad people out there, that's going to also use these tools to take advantage of older adults and caregivers. So Doug, you're talking about the ugly side of technology. Okay, just even that, general conversation could be its own panel session, and that is huge. So thanks for that there, Doug, just to bring that up there. Actually, Marjorie, I'm going to shift it up here a bit. I'm going to actually ask a question for all four of you, just to kind of give your last comments, okay, because we're going to finish it up here. And then, so if you have any one or two last comments to the audience, I'll start with Marjorie on whether it's a wisdom, a tip, an idea, whatever you want to say, just if you have one or two sentences to share.
Okay, great, thanks. I want to just say to Doug, I'm completely in agreement with you, Doug. I think that the point you brought up is really an important one and needs to be kept at the forefront. I am all for empowering the individual. And, like Lisa, you mentioned around, people having control of their or access to their own health records, things like that. I think it's really important. And I think technology is a tool going forward that can empower the individual to be in control of whatever services and tools that they use, rather than it being in the hands and under the control of the developers. So I think that that's really important for privacy going forward. I think ultimately people want to be self-empowered to do a lot of these things for themselves, but they might not always have that opportunity. So, I think the technology can really help with that. I also think that it's important when you're designing technologies there's an intersection of, who you're designing for, who your target market is, but also what's the longevity of the product that you're producing. Are you producing it for a really small target market that's only going to be using the technology for a short period of time? Or are you thinking of a broader market where the technology can be used for a longer period of time? And, in cases like that, technologies that are maybe, like I say, more integrated or more modular, things that can be added into technology we already have on hand, might be more effective for a broader market and a longer term.
So thanks there, Marjorie, appreciate that. Olive, I'll ask you just any last comments for our audience here?
Yep. I think always include those who are impacted by the program or service you are developing from the very beginning. And also when you're looking at older adults, there's a vast variety. When you look at older adults from 65 or sometimes 55 up to 100 plus, the needs of that vast stretch vary very, very much. So if you're planning to provide something that's going to impact on older adults and the definition you use is 65 and older, you better make sure you have the younger ones as well as the older ones, because the needs are very, very different.
Thank you, Olive. And I'll just ask Lisa for her last thoughts and comments.
So I guess what I'd say, and this is building on a comment that came up earlier, I think Olive made, is that it's really important to understand that many people are unaccustomed to providing feedback, and it can actually be intimidating. And lots of people don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or be seen as a complainer. So it's really important to give people permission to be brutally honest and encourage them to tell you what they really think. And in that same vein, it's important to recognize that criticism is a gift. So you shouldn't take it personally. You need to sometimes park your ego, and no matter how much you might disagree with what someone is saying, try to learn from it and understand how you can leverage the criticism to make your innovation better.
Thanks, Lisa. That is something for entrepreneurs. Yeah, they have to understand that thicker skin, the constructive criticism. It's not just to criticize. It's like, okay, there is a reason why they're criticizing. Okay, so thank you on that there. Doug, any last comments from you?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity, and I'm glad you put the Twitter things in there. So I'm willing to talk to anybody offline. You know, in person, I respond really well to cookies and milk and whiskey, but please and thank you works really well online.
There you go. Thanks, sir, Doug, again. So I wanted to just chime in on a few comments here, questions that is in the chat there. There is a, oh, I lost it here. Carrie. So I think I kind of understand this question. You're kind of inquiring if you are so it's in the chat for everyone to see here. Yeah, do people overcomplicate the tech part of things? Yeah, okay. In my opinion, great technology is something you don't even notice. Okay? It's not the technology or the tool, it's what it delivers. Okay, so it's not about the tech part. I support that. But then you're talking about your startup business, it sounds like, if you're a startup business, but you're using existing tools. To me, you are a business if you operate and you are an innovator trying to deliver service. I think that's what you're asking, you know, if you are a startup. But you are a startup, you know, you have to go in the mindset of that. And again, operate, you know, just like a business, like again, check out Startup Canada if you're not coming from that community, and any other entrepreneurial area that's out there. And I don't know if there was anything else that's really chiming in, just some confirmation from other people about great points. And then I see Nigel commenting here. In my opinion, there's real benefit using third party to engage with end users to evaluate a product, preferably one with design and facilitation skills. Yeah. So that's something we do a lot there. So Michael, I'm going to pass it back to you, back to Michael Krastowski.
Thanks, Ron. So yeah, just quickly to wrap up, I really want to thank the panel. You know, Ron, Lisa, Doug, Marjorie, and Olive. Thanks so much for giving your input here. I think it's very important, as we've all discussed today, to get that input for entrepreneurs, innovators, startups as early as possible. And you know, like you've heard here, you want to make sure you get people's honest opinion. And you know, one thing I'll quickly mention is we've had these older adult and caregiver insights panels with some people who are on this call, where they've spoken with startups and entrepreneurs and given them of their time to give direct feedback on their product roadmap and whatnot. And we've actually seen some changes made as a result of that, positive changes to help these startups. And you know, that's exactly the kind of thing, you know, the sooner you can do it, the sooner you'll benefit, and it'll reduce your own costs. So definitely, I second the idea that criticism is a gift and feedback is a gift, and you want to get that as much as possible. And from what you've heard, there are many folks out there who are more than willing to help you and engage with you. So, you know, with that, once again, thank you so much to everyone who participated here and to those that joined us to listen. We'll have more events like this. I posted a link, and hopefully we'll even get to engage more with older adults and caregivers at future events. It doesn't necessarily have to be a panel, maybe networking sessions or ways to connect. You know, we'll try to do that in any way we can, including Zoom, the medium of choice. So thanks again, and everyone stay safe, and wish you all the best.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.